Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 Drama. The Andretti F1 entry saga continues with 9 out of the 10 present teams, it seems, rejecting the advances, with Alpine the only exception, and also the teams that seemingly want not 200 million, which was the proposed entry figure, but more like 600 or 700 million for Andretti to get this done. Very much intrigued to your thoughts down below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. If you guys have missed this over the last few days, Andretti Autosport, legendary organisation in many American motorsports, they are trying to make the Formula 1 thing finally happen. They partnered with General Motors and the Cadillac brand to make that happen, and it seems like every hurdle they jump over to get this to happen, the F1 teams and Formula 1 itself will come up with a new hurdle to prevent it being the case. And even if they can put together this crazy amount of money we're going to talk about here in a second, I'm sure they'll find a new reason to reject this based on just the way this entry process works nowadays. Now, first of all, apparently last year in Miami, Andretti was obviously still keen at the time. They've been making this work over the last few months to actually get a proper entry bid put together. 2 teams at the time were happy for them to join, one of which was McLaren, one of which was Alpine. So McLaren were more than likely interested because of their driver stuff. I'm not exactly sure about this, but you know, McLaren, they're in IndyCar, they've got Pato Awards, they've got Alex Palou, a couple of notable names that they've been trying to get time in the Formula 1 car. I think they did actually, maybe at Austin or some other Grand Prix this past season, and potentially Andretti, an American team, gives that option for McLaren to send their drivers on loan or whatever. Maybe there's something there that McLaren are interested in. Alpine, they're more than likely down because of the engine stuff. They've got the Renault engine, or the Alpine engine, whatever exactly they're branding it as nowadays, and the plan is, I suppose, for Alpine, they only supply themselves, right? They would be probably quite happy by able to be potentially supplying a new team. Now, I think Andretti Cadillac have said they've got a deal ready to go. It's been rumoured whether that was with Honda, whether that's with Alpine and Renault, because the initial rumour was that Renault would be supplying the engines for Andretti if that was to be the case. So that's probably why Alpine are down, and they are still down apparently to the present day. This rumour coming out last night that 9 out of 10 teams have suggested they would not support expanding the grid to allow this entry, despite the FIA and the governing body being down for it, despite, I'm sure, the majority of fans being down for it, and also just American fans in general, because like there's 3 F1 races now in America. There's going to be an American F1 driver in Logan Sargent on the grid next year, a full American team with proper support from Cadillac and General Motors, rather than just, you know, a private team like Haas, would be great for the sport, I think. But obviously the F1 teams themselves disagree, with the exception of Alpine. So obviously we've heard from Toto Wolff, we've heard from, well, not Christian Horner yet, but like these teams are against it because I suppose they don't feel like it actually benefits them. And look, the teams have to agree to this for it to happen, but nonetheless, this whole dilution thing is where the frustrating things. And also at the end of the day, these guys want the status quo to be retained, I'm sure. Just the process doesn't seem great to me. So of course, well, the FIA has been pushing hard for this. Mohammed Ben Sulayem comes out and says, look, if you want to sustain the sport, you have to open it to the rest of the manufacturers in the world. Can't just have what we presently have. We are allowed to have 12 teams on the grid, and that's what he intends to make happen. And still, what Andretti intend to make happen, they intend to get through. They're not going to, as Michael Andretti describes in a second, listen to the naysayers, but these are his comments, and they're, well, quite harsh comments at that, but I think deservedly so, talking about the fact that Formula 1 is all about the money, it's all about greed and looking at themselves, not looking at what is best for the overall growth of the series. So either the full statement here, he says it's all about the money. First, they think they're going to get diluted 1/10 of their prize money, then they also get very greedy, thinking we will take all the American sponsors as well. It's about greed, looking at themselves, etc, etc. 2 interesting points there, right? Firstly, the dilution of the prize money. We'll discuss that in a second, and how the teams might want that to be, well, dealt with, right? This is a thing in other American sports as well. You try and enter a league, there's a certain amount of prize money to go around. Another team in the league, it means that that prize money is going to get diluted. And a good point actually on the sponsors, that okay, maybe crossing the minds of some of these teams, that if Andretti come through with proper backing and are an actual force to be reckoned with, as they intend to be, and as they have been in basically everything else they've done, that a lot of the American sponsors will want to sponsor that team, deservedly and understandably so, and maybe he thinks the teams are scared of that being the case. So we'll see if this can be dealt with going forward. He goes on to say, look, the owners look out for themselves, not what's for the best of the series. Mohammed Sulayem, of course, he's, well, in favour of this, right? His position is looking out for the future of the sport. He gets it. He's a racer. He understands the series needs to have 1 or 2 more teams. It's an FIA championship, and it holds most of the cards to get the expression of interest going. But you have to stay focused on the job, not listen to the naysayers. I actually use the naysayers as motivation. It's always fun to shut them up, he says, which is pretty spicy, to be fair. But look, at the same time, those naysayers are ones with quite a big say in terms of whether Andretti can actually get involved because, well, the FIA is down, Andretti is down, Formula 1 and the teams are not down as it stands, and, even talking about here the potential year they might enter if they could enter, suggesting that maybe 2026 would be the way to go, because they're probably not going to come in next year, 2024, and 2025 doesn't make that much sense just because, you get a whole new engine in the next year, a whole new set of regulations. More than likely, if this is to happen, they've got another 3 years to figure it out for 2026 and beyond, and hopefully they can. But I wouldn't put too much hope in it right now, especially because this is now what the teams say. Now, in fairness, going into this discussion and the opening of the kind of, interest proposals, expressions of interest that have been raised, there wasn't really a set figure. Now, there is a set figure, $200 million. The idea is you come in, you pay $200 million, and you're in. All good, especially if you bring in a big manufacturer like General Motors, going to bring a lot of eyes, going to bring a lot of sponsorships, right, to the sport, should add value to the sport as Toto Wolff wants to see. And yes, that $200 million might well deal with the prize pool dilution for 1 or 2 years for the other teams, but down the line, of course, you've got to bring that money back, otherwise the dilution occurs every single year. Apparently, though, the teams say, insiders are suggesting that it's more like $650 million. So, as I say, right, every single hurdle that Andretti jump over, the teams come up with something else to, say that it's a problem. Now, this figure is pretty big, because I heard the other day that, okay, 200 mil, it wasn't going to be enough anymore, it was going to be more than that. I wasn't really thinking it was going to be 3.5 times more, but apparently they consider that to be more appropriate, this $650 million effectively entry fee. So the idea is there's a net amount of revenue that goes to the teams, you bring an 11th team in, you've got to pay $200 million as an anti-dilution fee to split the prize money equally, to just pay back what the teams would lose by having another team in. Of course, that only, counts for a certain period of time, and after that, the teams would only agree to it going forwards if they brought more to the sport, as in more revenues, more eyes, all this type of stuff, more sponsors. However, with F1 now being rather attractive, team bosses are now asking whether 200 million is enough, and now stating that, that only compensates for about 2 years loss of prize money from the dilution, so an actual appropriate figure would be $600 to $700 million, representing 5 years of dilution would be more appropriate. Now, of course, the teams are going to say, oh, you know what, 200 million, oh, sorry guys, we meant billion, right? Just give us all the money. Like, I think you're going to have to compensate us for the next 20 years because that's the only way this is going to be appropriate, right? Like, the teams will do anything to bring this hurdle up, but still, 650 mil, like, it's not like they couldn't get this money together, right? But still, it's pretty outrageous, let's be honest here. And, look, in fairness, in the NHL, apparently there was a similar $650 million expansion fee, which is basically the same deal as we're discussing here. So, look, maybe that $200 million does significantly undervalue an F1 spot. That might be valid, but, it just seems to me that at the moment they're coming up with everything they possibly can to, prevent this from occurring. We'll see if there's any further developments. But yeah, Andretti are clamming back and saying they're all greedy, which I think is probably fair enough. The teams are saying you've got to pay us $700 million. Like, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments section, right, as always. A couple of other updates on the Mohammed Ben Sulayem side, actually. First of all, on the race directorship, because right now we've got a couple of race directors, Eduardo Freitas and Niels Vitic, right, who are both doing it this year, sharing the roles. Now, in fairness, right, I think, okay, Michael Masi wasn't great at his job, let's be honest, but having one race director does generally mean there's a bit more consistency, because the race directors basically exchanged weekends last season, right? And it means that some races, the consistency in the ruling is not really there to the next one because the director has a different opinion on what should happen. It's not a Charlie Whiting situation, unfortunately, anymore. So, with Masi gone, they had two race directors in. I think because it was Freitas, maybe it was Vitic, I forget exactly which one, was still doing other stuff as well in terms of race directorship in, maybe it was an endurance championship or something. So, apparently they're going to get rid of those guys and search for two new race directors going forward. I don't think they did a terrible job this season. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. But, apparently two new race directors coming in, and I just don't think this is the right way. You need one race director, goes to every race and keeps things consistent, and also it's someone that, the drivers and the teams can have some sort of relationship with, so people know what to expect from both sides. But intrigued to your thoughts on that one. The other update from him, there's something going on right now, rallying in Dakar or something, and he's been talking again about this whole personal agenda thing. Kind of funny, really, because I agree with him on this whole expansion thing, but on this, it's like, come on. It's funny to me, the fact that he talks all this about the fact that the FIA and Formula 1 shouldn't be a platform for a private personal agenda, but of course, by saying this, he's also suggesting his own private personal agenda, and on the last few days on Twitter, he's been slamming his personal agenda down all our throats with regard to this Andretti situation, right? So, it's some sort of hypocrisy, I would argue here. But yeah, basically what it says is, one thing we don't want is to have the FIA as a platform for our private personal agendas for the drivers. We will divert from the sport, which, like, there's an element that I agree with. It's nice when sport is kind of separate from politics and all the drama of the real world, but if drivers want to make statements on things they're passionate about, I think there's no problem with them doing that, but clearly the FIA now agrees. And also Lewis Hamilton, I'm not sure he's made a specific comment on this, but he's definitely implied over the last couple of weeks that he's not happy at all with these developments from the FIA, and probably will not, let's just say, you know, he won't comply with this so easily. It's kind of funny that Vettel retires and then immediately they're trying to enforce this. I don't think Lewis Hamilton would go down without a fight either on some of these issues. And also just a quick note here on, well, Juan Pablo Montoya, of course that kind of Formula 1 legend, his son Sebastian Montoya is joining the Red Bull Junior team, also run by Helmut Marko, coincidentally enough. So I think they're going to make him drive in Formula 3. That's the rumour that's going around. Don't think this has been announced yet or confirmed, but that is what seems to be the case at the present time. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you are new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.